Yeah, I mean, I've been a fan of yours for a long time, aware of your work for a long time.
Thank you.
I think
probably
you and I know some of the same people somewhere along the way.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. The music industry is so weirdly small, given how much music is out there.
It's bizarre, actually, because I don't know if you felt this way, but when you're on the outside, like when you're just starting and you haven't really broken in any way yet, it feels so vast and unnavigable. And then once you get into it, it's like, oh, it's just like the same 15 people all the time.
Yeah. And then you want to get out. You're like, wow, why did I spend so much time trying to get into this? Because then you have to try to like convince these 15 people to like work with you. But then you're like, why am I convincing these people to work with me when I could just build my own thing?
Yes.
Which is kind of where I ended up, because I'm such a wild human being and I have so many big ideas and I'm an eccentric artist. I'm like by nature, it's in my DNA. I've been like that since I was a kid. Like my mom, I don't think knew what to do with me as a child. So when I was on Island Records, I remember coming to them on like Phantom of the Dance Floor and they just straight up said, no, no way.
Right.
And so I was like, and that was a big thing for me because it was like, I was working on this amazing kind of theatrical meets dance with an opera singer with Stuart Price, who did Confessions on the Dance Floor for Madonna. And it was just so avant-garde and amazing. And like Queen did that kind of stuff too. So why can't I, And, but yeah, they're just like, no, we don't want a record like that. So I had to end up doing that all myself. And then I realized like, well, I did Hideaway independent.
Right.
So maybe there's something to that.
Yeah, no, of course. I mean, that's another thing I think is you can only kind of learn with experience in the industry. At least for me, when I first came in, I assumed that people with high positions of power or status or people who had been there for a long time had some kind of, like arcane wisdom that needed to be listened to. And so I've had those no's in my career too, which for me, it's just a confusing thing. Because for me, it's very clear. It's like, oh no, I'm showing this to you because I like it and I think it's good. So, there's a lot of bad stuff I didn't show you. This is the good stuff. And then when you hear no about that,
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. It kind of makes me question myself, or at least it did when I was younger. And then
it's always when you're younger, you're like, what? Well, they don't like me. Therefore, am I bad?
And then you get older and eventually you kind of realize that nobody knows what they're talking about and nobody likes to support an unfamiliar idea until after it's been proven, which I think is just like a human nature
totally
thing.
Yeah, humans don't like change and they like to feel safe.
Yeah.
And that's in our DNA. And then every once in a while, you get these weird, wild people who are the ones who would probably just go run after the grizzly bear. So I'm sure there's some need for that personality. It's just maybe not common, which I have. I'm just like, yeah, let's do it.
Well, and that's great. I mean, that's a good thing. We need that too. And I mean, I think that's a sort of perfect tangent to talk about where you're at right now, which is releasing this new album independently, which is this the first like album you've put out independently?
No, Crave was done independently.
Okay.
I work with distributors, but it was done right when the pandemic hit.
Right.
And I was like at the early stages of my head injury recovery. And it was an interesting scenario because I wasn't very healthy. I don't know if you know that whole story about the car crash.
I mean, I know a little bit just from prepping for this interview and following your career, but it's something I'd love to dive into as much as you're comfortable with, just because I think it's interesting.
Yeah, no, I've gotten quite comfortable speaking about it. So I mean, 2017. So that was right when I was just getting ready to dive into another album. I got into a car crash. It was in Canada. I wasn't even driving. I was in an Uber, cab ran a red light. smashed into us. And in a split second, my whole life changed because I sustained this brain injury that was progressively got worse over the course of a year and a half. And there's some spinal injury stuff mixed into that as to why it kept getting worse. And then, so a year and a half in, so that was 2017, we're moving into 2019. I didn't even begin getting better. I was getting worse for a year and a half. So when I started getting better, it was like I'd already gotten worse for such a long time that even 2.5 years in, I was still really not in good condition.
Can you talk a little bit about sort of what the challenges you were facing were? Like even like the moment of the accident, because it's interesting that you said it got worse over a period of like a year and a half. I mean, what was it? What was it at the start?
It was this weird feeling of just being completely shocked and confused, but not knowing where it was coming from. And then the first thing I noticed was my balance wasn't right. It felt like gravity was tilted to the left. It was like literally gravity was tilted this way and was dragging me down to the left. And I couldn't stand on my left foot. I couldn't hold myself up, which I'm a ballet dancer. So, I have impeccable balance. And I literally, for the life of me, could not stay up on the left side of my body without like a major compensation.
It's got to be terrifying.
Yeah. And then just extreme fatigue hit me. I developed severe headaches, but they came on so I ended up developing a horrible condition, which I actually still have that. We're still working on that one, but there's no known cure, although I have recently met some people who have managed to cure it. It's called cluster headaches, also known as suicide headaches. And they have that name because of the highest level of pain.
Right.
Known to humankind, basically. They're like, well, way more pain. I saw one literal science report say it's equivalent to being shot in the head 4 times a day.
Oh, man.
It's horrible. It's like, it's like condensed. It's really condensed. It's behind my eye. And it's like, it really feels like a gunshot, but you just somehow the gun doesn't kill you.
I have a friend's.
I shouldn't be laughing. I don't know why I'm laughing.
No, I mean, well, because what else are you gonna do?
You laugh. Like, yeah, I know it's I actually, in the worst of my pain, I have caught myself laughing at times because it's just like you're like, this how is this even possible? Like,
well, because it's ridiculous, right? Like
it's like it goes beyond sense. Like it's like got it. It's pain. Stop. And then it's like, no. Why would you even create this? Right. Like, this doesn't make sense, nature. Like, God, I really got it.
Yeah. Like what purpose are we serving here?
Noted. Yeah. I'm like, it's horrible. And then it's like, let me just crank it up. And the one thing we also we don't realize that pain is something that we feel a big impact. It's like, you get stung by a bee and it's like, ouch. You hit your hand on the pot and it's like, and then there's sort of a lingering pain, but the pain slowly dims. A cluster headache doesn't. It stays at the exact same. And that will drive you mad. It there's no dimming of the pain. It's just constant. And the consistency is actually in anything. It's like you hear a sound, beep,
yeah.
It drives you mad. If there's a break in the sound, it's easier to process. Same with pain. If there's change in the pain, you can process it better. When it's just a solid line, like pain, it's weird. I've experienced things that I can't even describe. But anyways, I tell people now, I'm pretty robust when it comes to psychologically and just with pain itself.
Well, am I
don't
right?
know. I don't react.
I mean, tell me if this is a reach, because I just know this from reading up about you. But I mean, even when you were young, you mentioned you did ballet, and I had read that you had an injury there as well. That maybe.
So yeah, I mean, basically ballet is so about alignment. Your body has to literally have the right alignment of your feet, curve of your arch up to your knees, through your hips, and so when they're looking at you for a ballet company, they're looking at angles of your body as well, because if you don't have the right angles, it's this gravity will break your hips down, it'll break your knees down. And I have weird toes. I've mentioned this before in podcasts, and I got so many people messaging me like, can you send me a picture of your toes?
I was about to say,
like, no,
careful.
No. I know. Anyways, I got like really long. I got like a short, big toe. And then I got like a long second toe. I got like what they call the royal toe.
Yes,
very Irish, I guess. Toe. Yeah, the royal toe. Terrible for points. So that's one thing. And then my arch is not like great for ballet. And then so when you really draw the line up to my knees, to my hips, like they basically told me, because I went to the national or I went to the Winnipeg Ballet and the National Ballet to when I was young to see if I could go train with them. They're in Canadian ballet companies. And I was quite young. I mean, I was like a teenager, you know?
Yeah.
So I was just thinking I would do that for my career. But I was getting some hip issues and even my knees were hurting. And then they sort of told me like, you can do this, but you're going to face having some severe injuries when you're older and like having mobility issues. So you have to think like, do I want to do this while I'm young and then not be able to walk very well when I'm older?
Wow.
Or do I want to pick another career? And I was kind of like, well, I don't really want to be not mobile or have like permanent pain problems in my hips and joints when I'm older. So,
I mean, that's smart for a kid that young. I feel like most kids that young, probably myself included, would just be like, oh, I'll worry about that later, you know?
Yeah. And I am that personality too. But you know what? I had other loves. I hadn't quite, settled on what I wanted to be. I loved ballet. I was good at it. I felt like I could definitely do it. I had the career path, ahead of me. But I also loved sailing. So I immediately became a sailor. And I was actually scouted at 14 to train for the Olympics for sailing. Again, I turned that down because I would have had to go to another city and live with train. And my mom was like, do you really want to go away when you're 14?
How'd you get into sailing?
I just signed up. My mom signed me up when I was younger, like a kid. And I always loved it. I still love it. It's one of my favorite things. I'd go live on a boat in a heartbeat and like disappear and never come back.
It is nice, man. My dad was a sailor. Like he would race boats and
nice.
I'd go out with him as a kid every once in a while. And I loved that experience with him. I have great memories of that. But me doing it by myself, like I think they put me in classes one summer and it just never took, but I still love, you're right. There's something about being out on the water that is really second to none.
Yeah, you have to feel the connection to nature and the wind. There's a moment where you just start to become one with the boat or the vessel. And even with a crew, like where you start operating as one organism and you don't even think, you just do. And it's one of the best feelings in the world. Like when you're on I sailed all sizes, but I used to sail on lasers and bites, and those are like smaller racing.
Yeah. My dad had
one
like
person,
a little 18-footer.
Yeah, and like 420s and CFJs are like two person little dinghies. But I just remember the moment where I just sort of started knowing when the wind would shift without knowing why, and I could without fully being able to see a gust coming, I knew it was.
Wow.
So I'd start shifting before things happened. And I realized like that's when I really developed a deep connection with nature as a whole. I mean, I've always been very connected. I was very much an outdoorsy person as a teenager. Like I went on a hike for 10 days in the mountains. It wasn't like, let's go camping for a night. It was like, let's go camping for 10 days.
Forever, yeah.
In the mountains with only a paper map, you know?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Many near-death experiences. I almost fell off a cliff once.
Wow.
I mean, those days are a little bit behind me, sort of.
Sure. But I feel like there's probably some, maybe not even like a risk-taking element, but it seems like none of those experiences daunted you for the next experience necessarily.
Totally. And I think that's what actually helps me as an independent artist. It's that I'm not really worried. Like, I know it's harder in some ways, but I know also you can do so much more, and you don't have people gatekeeping and like closing doors on you when you come up with some wacky idea that no one gets. Like a lot of times like Hideaway was a great example. I told people the idea for Hideaway, but it was just like, I'm going to dance down the street in a one take.
Right.
And people would jump out and they're like, and,
Yeah.
no, that's it. It would be great.
Well, and there's
they didn't get it, but then they see it and they're like, oh, and then they support it later. So sometimes you have to actually do it yourself for people to actually get it. And that's only because it's in your head,
That's the thing. No, I say that on this podcast all the time, is that no one can see what's in your head. And so
exactly.
it'll make the most sense in the world to you. But sort of one of the tragic parts of trying to break into the industry, and honestly, even just trying to maintain in music, is that that'll always be true forever, is that you're only going to be able to see it until it's out in the world, as much as you tell other people about it.
Yeah. And I had to learn to not be frustrated at people for not being able to see into my own mind. Because when you're young, you're like, why won't you do this? Why won't you support me? And you get angry. And then I later realized, like, I can't be mad at them for not getting it. Like,
yeah.
And my ideas are pretty out there, like, like I want to make a whole, like right now, like I want to make a movie to every song that I put out, or a music video to every song I put out. And it's going to be a series that changes genre as we go,
right,
without any explanation. Like, we went from first, I don't know if you've seen all the music videos for Dancing and Crying.
I haven't seen all of them. I've seen one or two of them, but I've heard the whole thing.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. Oh, wait 1 second. I'm going to turn my... You want to see who's with me right now?
I do.
Oh, look at this little guy.
Oh, look at you. Who is that?
His name is Little Man.
Little Man. That's crazy.
Little Man. He's a rescue Pomeranian, which is rare.
He's adorable.
He's so cute. He wears a diaper because he's not potty trained.
Oh, I gotcha.
I can't discipline him.
I don't know. I don't think you can see it, but I have down in my lap here.
Isn't it funny? Like, I always wonder how many people secretly have pets in their laps while we're in these interviews. And I'm like, why don't you just put them on camera? Like, why are we hiding our pets?
Yeah, this guy, I mean, it's like a constant, it's not a choice to have him in my lap. I'll put it that way. It's a requirement.
Yeah. Yeah, Little Man just like, he's so little though, you can't even see him. Here he is. Hi.
Oh, he's so cute. But wait, I want to go back to
back on track. Yeah.
No. We can go on as many tangents as we want. But it was interesting what you were saying about making all the videos for Dancing and Crying, and also the idea of like having the concept for it, but no one being able to sort of buy into it until they see it. And talking about Hideaway, like there's something. I don't know if you connect with this, but when I think about your work, and I was listening to a bunch of your songs from different eras earlier this morning, watching videos, I watched the Hideaway video again, and there's like an energy in a lot of what you do. The Hideaway video is maybe the best example of it, because it's when you were truly like doing it all DIY, it's sort of like straight from your head to the screen kind of project. But there's this amazing energy in it beyond like a well executed fun concept. I don't know. There's an energy behind it that to me is like kind of a DIY thing. It's kind of like a childlike energy. It's kind of like a theater kid energy.
Oh yeah, I mean that's what I am.
But I feel like that's consistent in all of your work. I don't know if you would agree with that, but when I listen back, I'm like, it's kind of, regardless of what it sounds like, how polished it is, like there's that core.
Well, I like not polished. I like polished. I like things that have some grit to them and aren't too perfect. Because I mean, nothing in nature is perfect. It's like nature's always trying to correct itself in the direction of perfection, but it never quite reaches it. And that's so when you see things that aren't perfected too much, like they feel alive. Like Hideaway feels like you could jump right into it and just join in. Yeah, like it feels like real life. And I've gotten that a lot from people. Like they feel like when they're watching it, like they're really there.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you could kind of tell, even just from like a nerdy production standpoint, you could kind of tell that, I mean, I don't know if you got permits or not, but it feels like you didn't.
No, no, we did not. Yeah. Those poor men at the beginning, those like in the white shirts that come out, they're not part of our production. Right. Like they're just New York guys. And then their jogger is not from, it's just a jogger going through. And we even encountered a cop, and the cop, I know the cop knew that they should have shut it down, but they obviously saw what was going on. And it was probably just as captivating on the road in some ways as it was in the video, like what's going on.
Oh, absolutely.
The cop just pulled out a phone and started filming it. So.
Was it one take? Did you have to do multiple takes?
Oh, yeah. It's one take. That we used the second take.
Okay, that was my question. It's like, how many times did you have to run through? It
was so DIY. Like, it was funny because my brother shot it, and he actually does do film, so it was convenient that he knew how to like hold a camera. But we had like called my mom, and we're like, Mom, do you mind? Because we went to rent a camera, and we couldn't even rent a great camera, but they're like, we had to put a deposit down in case we damaged it. And we're like, oh, we don't have, I mean, I had no money, right? So
yeah, wait, what was your life at this time?
I was living in, when I say the smallest possible apartment, like there was a room for one bed and only one more foot of space. And I had to like inch in. So I had to get a lofted bed.
Right.
So that I could fit, the only way I could fit anything in the room was to put it under the bed. So I was like on the rooftop. It's so New York.
Is this a roommate situation?
One of those desk beds. And then I had two roommates from China who spoke zero English.
Great.
So we would just wave and they would cook all this. I came home and they like just threw like live crabs on the pan, and I wasn't like prepared. And I was like, yeah, but I mean, they were so sweet. I actually really loved them. They're great. But I would spend a lot of time at Rami, the producer of Hideaway, his house, because his sister was my best friend in New York. And so we'd hang out a lot. So that made up for the fact that I couldn't fit in my own room, basically. But that was all I could afford at the time. And yeah, so when it came to Hideaway, I had to borrow a lot of money. And then I called my mom that day and was like, Mom, do you think you could rent this camera? And then they're like, you need to put down like a $30,000. We need to check that if anything goes wrong, that we can like pay back this much. My mom was like, absolutely not. So we ended up borrowing money from someone else and rented a not a terrible camera, but not like what we wanted.
Right.
And my brother had never used that camera before. So
nice.
Later he was like, oh, I should have done this differently and stuff. But I mean, everything was imperfect about Hideaway. Literally, I got the costume the day of. I was like, we're putting everything together. I'm like, oh, I probably should have a costume for this. And I was like, it's kind of 90s. I literally Googled 90s outfits and found you would find that exact outfit. It's from like a sitcom. The girl's wearing the jeans, the white shirt. And I was just like, I like it. Great. I went to the stores, like I need jean suspenders and a white shirt.
I mean, it's perfect. When you see it in the video, it's like the perfect outfit you could have had.
Yeah. The one thing that really like called me to them were the shoes. I was in a rehearsal for Hideaway that prior week. And when I came out of the rehearsal studio, I looked into a shoe store and they were just in the window glowing. And I was just like, oh, what are these shoes? I love these. And then I went in and didn't have the money, but I was like, I'll take them. And so the shoes, I think, became a little iconic in the videos. What else? Makeup artists, like, friend just called up, like everyone on set, like we had done one rehearsal. It took a week to put it together, but that was spread out over getting people to rehearse. But we only had one rehearsal with every group individually. And then we put it all together on the day of. Yeah. So it was a lot to put together. It was super hot that day as well. But we got very lucky because the sky was like a hot box. On this particular day, we had this perfect overcast and beautiful lighting.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you get the really harsh lighting from the sun. But we waited till like close to sunset. And then honestly, like it was so like New York streets, like put down the camera for 1 second. Some guy walks by, picks it up and keeps walking. We have to like chase him down. We almost did lose this camera.
Were you in Brooklyn? It looked like Brooklyn.
Yeah, it was. You know what's funny is I just did I just jumped out with Deadmau5 at his retrospective tour. And they like got me a hotel that wasn't near the venue, but just happened to be on the exact street of where Hideaway was. So I was like, did you like
think about that?
Plan this or something? Because it was like, there's a lot of hotels in this area and you picked the exact one from where Hideaway was done, which was kind of cool.
Yeah. I mean, it's the perfect, I couldn't like that song or that video more. Like, to me, that's like the perfect, it's just so interesting to me that something like that comes together so sort of like slapdash and by the seat of your pants and ends up having like it wouldn't have been. I will say I think it would have been worse if you had a big budget and if it
for sure.
Yeah, and there's just it's interesting to me like thinking about that song and obviously what happened afterwards. It blows up, your career goes crazy. It's a whole nother experience.
Yeah,
like
really crazy, like in a way that I couldn't even process, honestly. So usually things don't happen like that, you know?
Yeah. And I want to talk about that too in a second, but I just want to ask you, if you think back to that moment, how it all came together, the explosion of it, was it just this sort of coming together of like your talent and excitement plus the timing of it plus the luck of everything, the weather, all that? Like, is it just a bunch of little things coming together? Is it something bigger? I watched the Hideaway video this morning, and when it started, when you first start walking and singing, like there's just an energy there. Like I almost teared up watching it, where I was like, there's something captured in that video. I don't know if I'm just looking through rose-colored glasses, but I'm like, wow, the energy of that moment and what it was going to be is actually in the video. You can almost see it.
Yeah, you know, that exact time in my life, I think when you're like not sure if you're ever going to make it, but you have the willpower, but you have no expectations, but you have passion fueling everything you're doing. There's a magic to that. How that comes together, because you don't know your course. Like you don't know how to even plot your course. I didn't know how to plot my course at that time because I'd never been successful. So, you know, once you have success, then you have what you think in this, it's all in our heads. Because then we think, okay, well, I did that once, maybe I can do it again. And then you start plotting out your next course, but it doesn't work the same way.
Yeah.
Things work better when you actually don't know what you're doing, but you have the willpower within you. It's like, it's like it's kind of cliche, but it's like you have to go within yourself again and not know, and then just let inspiration drive you. So the less you know, the better. And I know we hear that a lot in life. It's like unlearn everything. And I had to do that again. It's actually literally what I did when I decided to come out with Dancing and Crying. And it came out a year later than I had even planned it. It's because I actually didn't know how I wanted. Had no idea how I wanted to come out. And at the time I had been through this whole healing process, and I'd been trying, you know, to get out into the world and get on stage. And there was a lot of trying and failing because I was in a lot of pain. And I do some shows and I come off and it would collapse after. And then I'd have these moments where I was like, I don't know if I can do this because I don't think I can handle this reaction after every show. And so there's times like it threw me back into the sense of, I don't know what my future looks like. And even if I can have it, do I want that? Because as much as I'm giving for everyone else, I am going to be sustaining a lot of pain as a result of it. And can I handle that kind of a sacrifice? And then one day I just literally woke up and I was like, I don't know what I want. And that's when I moved to Norway. I don't know if you saw that whole...
No, I did not know that.
Yeah, so between February and June last year, I moved into a cabin in Norway with no Wi-Fi.
Okay.
And then I ended up, because I know people out there, ended up, all I did instead of focusing on myself is I focused on others. And I would mentor students at a music school a couple times a week. And then the rest of it, I just let go of everything. I hardly communicated. I didn't know what I wanted. I wanted to not know. And
was that, sorry, not to interrupt, but just was that a conscious, you were talking about the importance of sort of unlearning things earlier. Was this a conscious thing of like, I need to unlearn some things so I will go do this?
Yeah, it was like something doesn't feel right in my life. but I can't pinpoint what it is. So it must be a balance of everything together. So I just clean slate. And I left the place I was living in it, but I left the place I was living in and I put everything in storage. And I didn't actually know I was going to Norway because that's how the universe works. It is. I was talking with I go rock climbing, indoor rock climbing, and I met some really cool med students last night. We had this long conversation about is it a metaverse? Are we living in a metaverse in a simulation? Right? I think a lot of us have that conversation these days, but there is a level of that. Like whether or not we're in some video game, there is a level of simulation to reality, no matter how you look at it, because we're beholden to our senses, and our senses are simulating.
Sure.
Of some sort of reality that comes together as what we perceive as our reality, but it's never accurate because everyone else has their own, they perceive things differently. People smell differently. They see differently. They hear differently.
Someone sees, blue. Someone sees purple. That kind of thing. Yeah.
Exactly. So it's all just our own perceived realities, and then our reality combines with the people around us, which combines with, our city, our culture, our species as a whole. And then there's all these layers of simulation that you just can't debate. But within that, one thing that I have learned, and it is consistent, is that when you stop doing anything, you will start doing the right thing. Like we actually have this built-in sense of knowing, and we think we got to go forth with our thoughts, and our thoughts think that they're us, but they're not. Like the brain. Okay, so healing my brain really taught me a lot because I had to do this therapy called neurofeedback. Have you ever heard of that?
No, what is it?
Oh, it's pretty cool. I think everyone should just go do this, honestly. So they'll scan. It's non-invasive. They put this helmet on your head. And at the time I did it, they had to put this goo, goo, and then they connected these little nodes to my head all over the place. Now they actually have expanded the technology so you don't have to put the goo on. They stick a helmet on with all these little things that can literally read the electricity flow in your brain. So they can map your brain electrically.
Right.
And literally, so you get this picture of the electrical circuits in your brain, and they can tell you which neurons are being overused, which ones are not working. And literally, it was the first time I actually saw my head injury because it painted it. It was like beep, 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 beep. It was crazy. It was like first impact, second impact.
Oh, wow.
98% concussed brain. It was like it was sad to see, but it's also really happy to see, like, I'm not crazy.
Right.
But then seeing that they can start regenerating, so they can target pathways that are not working. They can move the nodes around, and then they force your brain to use them and reopen those pathways.
Is it like electrical stimulation of certain areas?
So the thing is, okay, so this is how it works. You sit in front of a video game, basically, and there's a spaceship or a car or whatever. I think they change it up, right? And they target a pathway. So anytime that pathway fires, the spaceship will move.
Oh, interesting.
But here's the thing. You're not consciously flying it. It's your subconscious mind that's doing it. And your subconscious mind, when it figures that out, it wants to fly the plane. It will fly the plane. It has to fly the plane. But you're not consciously thinking of it. So there's a part of you that has desire that you're not even connected to. Like it's like, that's how I fly the plane. I'm flying the plane. I will fly the plane. I must fly the plane. But you can't feel that side of yourself. And that was weird to me because as I'm sitting there, I'm like, there's a part of me that has chosen to pilot this plane that I am not consciously aware of.
Yeah. That's
and that was really a freaky separation, but it actually helped regenerate my brain help open up the channels where my brain was having trouble falling asleep, which was very connected to healing because you need to sleep to heal, and I couldn't sleep. So the neurofeedback really helped with that process. And once I started sleeping, the healing, instead of spiraling down, started going in the right direction.
God, that's fascinating. I mean, we could do a whole nother podcast about just that idea itself of. Oh yeah, we can. I mean, and I think about that all the time. I think something you hear a lot these days is like, you are not your thoughts, and that, there's there's the consciousness behind your eyes that is observing your thoughts go by. And I mean, that experiment seems to speak to that in some ways, but I think there's something in that too that's connected to creativity as well. Like even when you were talking about sailing and how you could sort of start to predict there's my cat again.
No, let the cat.
Oh, he's going to do what he wants. Yeah.
Let him join. Yeah, let him join.
Yeah. Oh, he's here. But no, when you were talking about sailing and sort of being able to sense when the wind was going to change before it did, which is again sort of an unconscious thing. There's something in that. I think it's the same as like writing music. I don't know if you agree, but I don't know. Is it the same for you? I don't really know your songwriting process of how it comes to you, but I feel like oftentimes it's just that sort of trying to make yourself as blank as possible.
I find the best way to really, especially with a new producer or new collaborators, there's always this like tension of like, who is this person? And it's, again, a lot of that is subconscious. Like you're consciously trying to create a connection, but there's always there's a weird inability to get into the creative flow sometimes with new people. And so I just sort of naturally, but like I started spending like 3 hours doing no work with him. We just talk, we go get coffee, we walk, we like catch up on life. It got to a point where I literally, and I kind of regret this. This is one of my biggest regrets in life is, Chris Walla from Death Cab for Cutie, former guitar player, was a big fan. And we ended up starting this long conversation when I went to work with him in Montreal. And it ended up being such an intense conversation. We talked for 3 days straight and wrote no music. Right. And then we're like, we'll get back to it again. And then he moved to Norway. Oh, man. But a different place in Norway.
Right.
So sometimes that was the only time it backfired. But so you have to let go. You have to let go. You have to stop. You have to stop the idea that your thoughts are like, I need to write a song. It needs to be good. It has to be with this person. This person does this style, which means we need to do this. It's like your brain is your thoughts are all fear-based. They literally are only fear-based. That's how the conscious mind works.
Yeah. Scanning for threats, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Or maybe it's subconscious. I actually think it's funny because we perceive it as conscious, but I think it's coming from our subconscious and our ancestry. So I think our subconscious is sending signals to our conscious mind, which is abstracting those into different potential possibilities, which it presents to us. And I think we think that that's what we think. But I actually think what we're supposed to do is take that information and then send feedback to our subconscious. Like, actually, no, this is the reality now. Yeah. And thank you for this information that feels relevant, but that's not relevant anymore. Like,
absolutely. Yeah.
There's not a lion chasing me right now.
Totally. You know? Yeah. I mean, I think everybody can relate to the idea of having to tell yourself that you're being ridiculous, or having to tell yourself that, this is not a real fear, or that you've overreacted, all those sorts of things. Obviously, it's like, well, who are we telling then, right?
Right. And how many of us are we telling?
Right.
Now in like psychology, there's a book called No Bad Parts.
I don't know that. They start
mapping your subconscious. And there's multiple personalities in everyone, because our trauma actually breaks us apart. And as we hit different traumas through our life and they get stored in our body, you can actually locate them quite easily. But as you find them, you realize trauma becomes its own consciousness, and it will speak to you. So once your trauma forms, any stuck energy becomes its own consciousness. Anything that is collapsed into place, I swear it becomes a life of its own. And if you think of us, we're like a form. We've collapsed into this form. So we become one thing with one idea. And so your trauma becomes its own idea. It sends you ideas. So if you have multiple traumas from multiple experiences conflicting with each other, that's when you start to just get confused and triggered. I think that's where anxiety comes from, because they're not communicating. So you have to, this book in particular helps you map all of these different traumas that identifies different ages, have different feelings. It's all protective in nature. That's right. The theory. But so you have to identify what they're trying to protect, and then start connecting them with each other. And then slowly you bring them together into one consciousness. But we break apart. And then we have different ideas constantly going. And so we're confused all the time, because we don't know, we can't feel ourselves because we're so many different ideas that don't seem to synchronize. So it's all about synchronizing within ourselves. Really just mastering ourselves is the only thing we need to be doing on this planet.
Does writing music on that, like with that lens, does writing music help you with that process, or does it sometimes confuse it more? Because I could see it going either way.
It helps a lot, actually, because it gives a voice to, usually, like, when I think about it now, and I haven't, like, I read the book, but I haven't, like, put a lot of tons of thought into, like, they have, like, practices and stuff you can do to map it. I've done some of it, but what I can say is, like, as a writer, when I think about connecting those two ideas, whatever is dominant at the time, whichever trauma is expressing itself, has taken over your conscious mind at that moment, sort of takes the wheels, as you know, so one way to look at it. That's the one that presents itself. And it's usually from that perspective that I pull the information from. So I then get a better understanding of that exact channel. And I think it connects that channel to the whole, and I master it in some way. So, and there's parts of me that I actually feel I won't write about because they're like, no, I will not come forth. And a lot of it's just like my head injury, like actually like going back and like recapping that experience. My brain's like, no, we will never talk about that.
Yeah.
Cause it was so traumatic. The how long it was spread out, and there's so much darkness, and just thinking it would go away. It didn't go away, realizing it might never go away, enduring it, wondering if I can endure it. Like,
right.
It's just a spiral. So it's something that actually now I'm realizing. So the videos that I'm making, which I didn't realize, and this is how our creativity actually becomes our greatest healer. If we just let ourselves follow our instinct and flow in the direction that our body or our soul wants us to move, it will move us in the direction of healing no matter what. And so as I'm sitting, not knowing what to do with myself, I spent a little bit of time in Canada before I went to Norway. And I started just getting weird little fun kid-like desires. Like my friend had a camera and I was like, let's just do a photo shoot. And he's like, I'm not a photographer, but yeah, that'll be fun. And he owned a museum and he had a basement. So we were like, let's set up in the basement. And it had kind of a little bar setting. And he's like, why don't I call my friend? He has a vintage collection for men. So I was like, yeah, I'll wear some men's clothing. But he's like, I got a few women's things too I'll bring. And then he's like, why don't I bring my brother? He does like stuff for TV, and we didn't specify that he was the DP for like Umbrella Academy and all these big TV shows. And he shows up unannounced with an entire movie set worth of lighting and just starts setting up. And we're like, who is this guy? And he's like, it's my brother. We're like, where did this movie set come from? And he's like, I don't know. I just brought it. So he's like, so suddenly we're like, oh, that's cool. Let's dress all like 1930s. We just dressed when whatever was there,
Right.
And then I was like, I was in this existential crisis moment in my life. And I was like, I don't actually feel like I want to be smiling at the camera or like looking sexy or dancing. I'm like, I feel sad. I want to be sad. I just want to be sad. And so it was supposed to be a photo shoot, but Dancing and Crying is the first video we did by accident. It was not supposed to be a video. It was this photo shoot that we dressed up for no reason. No one's ever supposed to see these photos.
Right. Crying
eyes, and then whoever was in the building at the time became the cast. And who's now the director of all of these videos. I was like looking at him taking photos and I was like, but you're a DP, right? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, well, can you just shoot video? And he was just like, no, because it's a photography camera. And I was like, does your photography camera shoot video? And he's like, yeah, but the memory card's small and the files won't be very big. And I was like, but we can shoot video. And he's like, not very much. I was like, how much? He's like, maybe 3 takes. I was like, let's do it. And he's like, well, what song? I was like, I don't know. I wrote Dancing and Crying first. Let's do that one. Right. Threw it on. And then And then so suddenly we're like, no plans for this video. It was like, let's just do it because I'm looking at this footage and I'm like, this is kind of cool. I never would have thought of this myself. And if I had thought, you know, if my thoughts had ever been thinking. But then I was like, there's all these characters in here. Like, this is fun. And so I ended up editing the footage together and trying to make it look like some wild night. And then everyone was having so much fun at that shoot that we're like in a text thread and we're like, let's do it again. And so we booked another day at my friend's museum. My friend just conveniently owns a museum. So we took over and we're shooting this museum heist. And the director, Gregor, was just like, this is so fun. I can't wait to like put together the first music video. And I was like, Gregor, haven't you seen it? I already sent it to you because I had to do it that night. He's like, what? I was like, that's what we're here shooting. We're shooting the next chapter to that one. He didn't even know what we were shooting and somehow was shooting the right thing anyways. It was just sort of like, again, the synchronization. We were all perfectly in sync without realizing it. And it became, without us planning, it just started writing itself. Like we ended up happening to be all of us in Wyoming at the time we shot the more recent videos that are coming out. So there's like the mysterious disappearance of Etta Place. I'm on like horseback, right? And it's like a spaghetti Western. We're dino digging in Wyoming because my cool museum friend knows paleontologists and so want to go dino digging? And I'm like, hell yeah, let's go. Next thing I know, I've discovered an 80-foot Diplodocus.
Really? That seems like a big deal.
Literally. Oh, hell yeah. I don't get to keep it, but someone's making money off of that.
Well, I was going to say, I feel like that doesn't happen very often, right? That you discover like a giant dinosaur fossil?
Giant dinosaur. Well, in my circle, it can be more common. Let's just put it that way. If you really wanted to discover a dinosaur and you're like, I have to, and it's on my bucket list, we could definitely make that happen.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I won't delve too deeply into what your secret dinosaur connections are. Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's people who dig dinosaurs up for a living.
Oh, absolutely. But I mean, I guess am I wrong? I don't know if you know this, but to me, I'm like, that can't happen that often anymore. Like, haven't we found a lot of them at this point?
There's so many dinosaurs. So it's just knowing these people actually can look at land. They can tell what era it's from. They can see. They somehow know, like in the place we were at, they knew that it was like two flood zones.
Ah, interesting.
I don't know how to speak like them, but there was two floods, and then it washed all the bones up onto this one spot on top. So had the bones been below, they would have just deteriorated in the water, but they were washed up in this great flood from two directions. So all these bones just piled up. And so in this one area, there's you can't not find a dinosaur, really.
Nice.
Now, finding a whole dinosaur intact, you're finding like a lot of bits and pieces of dinosaurs, but they do find a lot of like really well-preserved skeletons, and
that's amazing. And
it's pretty damn cool.
And it's in your music video?
Not the dinosaurs, but while dinosaur digging, we're like, well, we're all here anyways, and we're all in the first video. Like, we're all friends. Like, this is the thing is we do all these adventures regardless. So we're like, well, hey, we're all going to be in Wyoming. Let's just shoot the next chapter there, and we'll make sense of it when we're there. So our Airbnb host ended up like lending us his horses and helping us find like local gunslinger people. And then we've helped us hook up like a little Western town to shoot at. So it was super like again, it's like kids. It's like, what if we do this?
Well, that seems to be an ongoing theme in all these stories you're telling.
It's just I mean, here's the thing. You should be having fun, or else why are you doing it? Really? Like we wake up and then there's all this time to fill in between, and then we die. Right?
Yeah.
We're filling in space and we're creating our own life. We are the creators of our own life. So people have like created this reality where we become like a tool in someone else's vision, which we all are there to help each other. But at the same time, we think, well, I need to go be something that creates that vision for them, and I can't do my own thing. You can. Like, it's basically, if you look at life as a canvas, you just have to you don't always have the paints that you don't have every color, but you just work with what you got. You're like, I got blue, red, and green. Okay, let's go.
Yeah.
That's what, there it is. That's,
I talk about that on here a lot in terms of, because I'll talk to a lot of like music producers, that kind of thing. And, the idea of like, say, writer's block will come up. And for me, it's like anytime you get into some kind of creative problem like that, the solution is almost always just to think like, what's the most fun choice I could make right now? Yeah, well, that's the thing is like everything feels the way it was when it was created. Like Hideaway felt that way on set. So you can have like someone writing a happy song, but they feel pissed off that day. And they're like, if it doesn't register, it really just, you can't lie. We all think we can lie our way through things, but you really can't. No, I agree. And I mean, it definitely comes out in the art too. I mean, I think there's a certain level of artifice where you can mask some things in your music and that sort of thing. But in general, the songs we all know and love and the biggest hits and the ones that last and become iconic, it's because there is something real imbued in them,
Yeah, and it's the reality is the non-reality. It's like what we identify as not real is what really is real. I think I had a thought yesterday because I was thinking about life as this labyrinth a lot lately. I'm very metaphoric in the way that I walk through my own existence.
Through your own labyrinth.
They help me. Yeah. Yeah. So, because it's not this straight line. And a lot of my art, as I move forward, it pulls from the past. And Dancing and Crying is a really good example of that because I always felt like the folk and singer-songwriter and kind of Americana, Canadian-grown prairie girl that does storytelling. And that's one of my greatest sort of skills as a writer is that style of writing. Something I put on the back burner to then, because when Hideaway picked up, I was a songwriter and that was sort of what I was doing. I was writing for other people and pitching songs to other people. So I was writing in all these different genres and I wasn't thinking about myself necessarily as much. And I was, I had been writing kind of singer-songwriter style stuff for myself. But when Hideaway came about, I just knew I had to sing that song. It was a gut feeling. I was like, this is weirdly mine. That doesn't make sense because I'm from Calgary, Alberta, and everyone wears cowboy hats there, and but the songs that I write that make people cry and like move them the most emotionally are these more folky style records. And I wanted to bring that emotional element into my dance music. So it's like walking through this labyrinth and you go through a door and suddenly you're like 15 years in the past and you're bringing that into your way forward. So with Dancing and Crying, I brought the past into the future as the next step. And so you're getting this you're getting where I came from and where I am all together as one in these dance records. And so we got The Mysterious Disappearance of Etta Place. Have you heard all of them? Like you've heard the whole...
Yeah, I heard the whole thing.
Okay, so you've heard Strangers too, and Go Back. So Strangers, which is coming next, which I'm honestly so excited for that track. Very folky, very songwriter. So a lot of my early songs are not from my perspective. I put myself into other people's shoes. So Strangers is one of those songs of like somebody who was crying at a bar and like had just been through something really, really hard. And then somebody at the bar sees them and wants to take them out of this moment of sadness and just create this little cocoon of joy just for this little moment while they're there on the dance floor, just to help them, I was almost like writing a movie as I was writing that song, which obviously I don't know when this podcast is coming out, so I don't know if it's going to be out by the time people are listening. But
I'm
eventually,
not sure either, but I think it's coming out relatively soon. So
we'll and once it's out, it will be out, so they will then be like, okay, but yeah, and then Go Back is very folky, very like the lyrics are just they're kind of confusing too, like by design. It's sort of it's meant to sort of be its own labyrinth, that one with lyrics. But I don't know. Okay, so we were like dancing around things. But when I brought up the labyrinth, metaphor, what I was really thinking about, because we walk through this reality, right? And we're like, where are we going? Like, where are we going? I'm going from here to there. I'm going to the grocery store. I'm going to my job. I'm doing this. You're here talking to me. But where is this taking either of us?
Right.
Like, where are we headed? And that's the really confusing thing, because then we keep doing this and we go about our lives like this and then we die.
Well, and that's we're all headed to the same place in the end, right? So it's sort of.
Yeah, but we're also kind of there all the time, right? We're already in the place we're going to in a weird way, because that's what's fueling us, is this source that's not here. It's not our physical body. It's not our thoughts or anything. It's in some sense, it's nothing at all. And then I had this weird reverse sort of like image come to me that everything in our existence, all of the physicality, is actually like the walls of the labyrinth itself. It's all these shifting walls, this form that we're trapped inside of. And it's the empty space that is actually where the journey lies. You can't discover except for in the unknown. You cannot know the maze except to go through it.
Right. That's interesting.
So, but you have to, the art is going into the emptiness to find your way in no direction at all. Because you can't really, in a labyrinth, you cannot just go forward. You go forward, you go back, you go up, you go down, you go through walls, No,
it's fascinating. I mean, I like the idea that the negative space is kind of where the magic is. Like earlier, you were saying, everybody hates change or fears change or tries to resist change. And that's kind of the same idea too, right? Because I think deep down, we all sort of know that like we have to go through change, and that's how we progress, and that's how we fix things in our lives, is by going through changes and doing uncomfortable things that lead us to, better places. And I get it's kind of the same thing you're talking about, right? With the labyrinth idea, is that, finding your way through the maze is not fun all the time, but it's sort of the only way to get where you're going. If you don't, you just sit stuck in the maze.
I know, but when you stop if you stop at the beginning, the middle, or the end, you will be unhappy no matter what. Like the moment you stop, you're in the worst place. So
I feel like
you never want to stop.
I feel like you don't stop a lot in general. That's the sense I'm getting from this conversation.
I'm not just running around manic, again, it's
I didn't mean that.
Even if you think of our conversation now as one of the walls, right? It's moving us through we're encountering each other right now, which is making us probably realize something within ourselves that we need to go into. So this is just giving us feedback for a direction that we're going internally.
Yeah.
Because you identify with the empty space, right? So suddenly that's like, okay, within myself, I identify with this concept of empty space and moving through that. So that's, in a sense, we've become a wall for you to now bounce in the right direction within yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when you start seeing life as these not bad walls, but walls for your journey to move forward through yourself, literally.
Yeah, I know. I do know what you're saying. I mean, it also makes me think of it's a series of little collisions, right? Like you and I collide for this little moment. We go off on
bumper cars.
Yeah, totally, bumper cars. And, in some weird, minuscule, unmeasurable way, we have altered our course by having this conversation in a way it wouldn't have otherwise.
Even the tiny alterations, you go into outer space, will take you completely to a whole other galaxy, in the long run. Yeah. And a bumper cars is a great metaphor, because it's not fun just driving around. You want to bump into each other.
That's right,
that is the fun. Colliding is the fun part.
That's a really good
We just
part.
have to remove the resistance to it.
Well, I mean, in all of this, it's interesting. The reason I said you struck me as someone who doesn't stop a lot is I feel like there's sort of an irrepressible optimism to you, or at least an energy that it seems like you have a lot of energy for what you're doing. It seems like you've managed to not lose the excitement for what you're doing, which I think is worth mentioning in the sense of, you had this crazy car accident, you had years of recovery, you've had ups and downs in the industry, all of these things. Can you ascribe that to anything? Is it something you've learned along the way about keeping yourself happy and engaged and creative?
I think I just really like having fun, and I seek to have fun, and I seek to be happy. If you notice a trend of victim mentality going around, people are I'm sick in this way and I got this mental disorder. I'm not saying people don't have them, but it's like, it's almost become like a bragging point, to the point where people are almost like actively moving into their darkest places.
Right.
And as opposed to trying to correct the chorus, because you can't always, again, like nothing's perfect. Nature will never succeed in being perfect, but always will move in the direction of trying to perfect.
Well, and this
everything.
is just real quick, a thing I talk about on here a lot too, the idea that we're fed as artists that you need to be tortured and you need to be broken in order to make good art. And that if you fix something, that like the art could get worse. I think a lot of people have that worry. And that's something I like to talk about too, because that to me couldn't be further from the truth.
Yeah, well, here's the thing is like, if you stay in the pain that you're in indefinitely, people will move forward without you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the moment you get stuck in one place, you start disintegrating in some way or another. Like it's again, like labels want you to stay in the same place so they can keep capitalizing on the same sound.
Yep.
But eventually the culture, and very quickly, especially with the way the world is in social media, it's like changing used to be every like couple of years, then every year, then every 6 months. Now it's like might as well be every day. It's a new thing, you know? So you can't keep up with it. But I lost my train of thought again. I'm trying to connect it back to what was the question?
I kind of lost it too.
But, no, we're really
no. This is how you know it's good. This is how you know it's good.
Yeah. But, what are we even talking about?
Yeah. But no, let me ask, because we mentioned like a million years ago what happened right after Hideaway came out and that explosion of attention. And I think this does connect back to what you were just saying about the labels kind of wanting to put you in a box. Because for you at that time, it must have been weird if I put myself in your shoes at that time. The song blows up. All of a sudden, you have all this interest, hype, buzz, attention. You're touring. You're doing all these new things. But I would imagine, too, there's probably an industry perception or at least expectation or pressure on you at that point to be like a fully realized pop persona, like it's like, well, what's the next hit? What are we doing next? Whereas for you, that must have been odd, making this thing totally on your own, not having expectations on it. And then all of a sudden, everyone else's expectations are on you. Does that make sense? It was a
weird thing, because Hideaway was such a unicorn that even they knew that it wasn't a normal scenario they were dealing with. And so that actually created a lot of fear very early. Before we even put out the second single, they're like, well, how are we going to make it like Hideaway? And it wasn't Hideaway. Giant in My Heart was the second single. And a lot of fans actually like that one even more than Hideaway. When they grow with the record, they tend to latch on to that one as their like long-term favorite. But it wasn't Hideaway. It took more time to sink in, to like digest the emotion of that song, but people fell in love with the music. So they were worried that they didn't know. The truth is they didn't know what to do, because it wasn't a scenario they had dealt with, but they wanted the same thing again.
Right.
But they couldn't. It's like every once in a while you get struck by lightning, but that doesn't mean you have to get struck by lightning again. You know, they're like, we need to get struck by lightning again. How do we do it?
Yeah.
And it's like, go into the field, get wet, go. Like, where's the lightning? You know?
And so classic record label. Yeah.
Yeah, they're more like fixated on like, how do we get another lightning bolt than like, oh, well, why don't we actually build like a windmill to make electricity? Like, where's other things we can do? Like, hey, it's like, I already got a windmill. We don't need the lightning. We just have to turn this windmill on, and it might take a little longer than the lightning, you know?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good way to put it. Did you feel them trying to assign like an artistic identity to you before you had necessarily figured out that for yourself in a way?
I think they weren't used to an artist, because I'm very, very much like, my creativity is like, it's like an explosion. So I'm like, okay, great. How about this, you know, next? So I was already, Hideaway was like in the past for me. I was already like, okay, let's move into this new chapter, you know, like not like changing, but like, because I was really all about my Reeboks and my my style, like all that was really what it was. Like, that's the funny thing is, it's funny because they took that, because in this moment even though I wasn't like wearing Reeboks till that day, I loved those Reeboks. Like I fell in love with them in the window. Then I was like, okay, I love this outfit I'm seeing online. I want to do that. It was really me. It was like, It wasn't like, let me try to recreate this thing. It was like, oh, I love this. Let's put this on. And then I made the hair myself one day and was like, oh, this is cool. It's like a mohawk, but I don't have to shave my head. So it gives me the best of both worlds. And so it was like, you're seeing me, right? And it's always me in motion. And Hideaway was supposed to be filmed in LA first, but I just wasn't feeling the vibe. So I came back to New York and was like, let's do it here. It was hard to do in LA too, because I didn't actually have a network there as much.
Okay.
But so it's just it was this shifting and this adaptation of my personality. Was like, okay, well, like for me with a label now, it's like, oh, wow. So we have all this new stuff available that we can create with. Let's create. And they're like, no, hold on. Do not say that word. Let's replicate, you know? and I think a lot of people like easily jump into like, okay, yeah, let's do this. Like the label wants me to do this. Let's do it. Let's create within that. Whereas it blocked me. Because I think that's how I am just built. I actually was like, what do you mean? Like, what? So there's a really weird communication between the label and myself. And I don't know, like I was angry at the time, but now when I look back, I'm like, they just didn't get it.
Yeah.
And how could they? Like, so
of course that it goes back to what we were saying at the start of this too, that not everyone can see it all laid out at the time. I mean, it's interesting because, so this podcast, like I talk to, it's mainly like a dance music, electronic music focused show.
Which we haven't talked about any of that.
Right, exactly. Which I love. But I mean, I think it makes me want to ask you, I guess, do you or did you ever have an idea of like, I am an artist that fits in this world. I am a part of this scene. Any of those kinds of thoughts, because I think you've absolutely had a huge impact on dance music and you've worked with huge names in dance music. And I mean, the whole new record is like various iterations of dance music. But at the same time, I could also say, oh no, you're in all these other worlds as well. And I'm curious if you think about that kind of thing yourself.
At some point, you gotta choose your course to some degree, or else, your river becomes the ocean. Mm-hmm. You don't necessarily know where you're going. I love to dance. It's just something I've always loved to do. So dance music is something that always makes sense to me because I always want to dance. And you turn on a dance groove and I'm going already. I'm just like, let's do it, It's really hard to turn on a dance beat and to have me not start writing.
Right.
It just will. But in one of our biggest struggles is the fact that I have this vast sort of abyss of other styles of songs in the files that were like, will this be too confusing to put out? Which now that I'm merging all these sides of myself, it actually makes so much more sense because it's really, I'm not choosing a style because it doesn't really fit me, like Deadmau5 can send me a track like Bridged by a Light Wave and I can write Bridged by a Light Wave because it inspired something in me in that moment, which fit into that world, that sort of style. But I could not stay there forever, or else I wouldn't be actually creating the way that I'm meant to create. I don't even think that wouldn't be a natural way to create either. It's sort of, that's when you start getting very fear-based and being like, I have to do this or else I'm not going to make money or my fans won't want me. Or again, there's a control aspect to that as well. You're starting to control your audience. And there is branding works. I did the branding thing because it was like, everyone was like, that mohawk's great. Keep doing it. And I was like, okay, I like it. But the moment I stopped liking it And everyone was like, keep it. And I was like, I actually am like, I'm sick of it. It's hurting my head. My hair is getting destroyed. Like, I want to take it down. And people were like, no, don't take it down. We need you to wear that because it's making us money, you know?
Yeah.
And the moment that mentality started kind of seeping in, I was already out. Like, I just wasn't happy. Honestly, the truth is I just like being happy. That's it. I like being happy. And if I'm not happy, I try to find a way to be happy. And honestly, making music makes me happy. Dancing makes me happy. Going on adventures with my friends makes me happy. Making movies makes me happy. Writing narrative. So we didn't talk about going along with all the music videos. Between every song is a radio theater play. So I'm voiceover acting with my friends. And we're playing all the characters that you see in the music videos. It's just because we like hanging out and have fun when we hang out. So honestly, like this whole process, like if you can see in my face, I'm just
no, I love it.
It's so unusually fun that we're all, and I'm saying we have the stress of like, there is realities like deadlines, rollouts. The moment that we put the deadline on the volume 1, I almost had a panic attack because I'm like, oh no, I have to actually like make this deadline now. But there's a good because you're like, this is how you carve things into reality. Like there's a point where you're like, I see the sculpture in my head, but you really have to start chiseling it out or else it's not going to be there.
Yeah.
So it just became a new art form. I realized we have to look at it as its own art and its own fun. So it's about finding the right team. And we've been through like, we thought we had the right team. Okay, they weren't quite right. Even mid like rollout, we shifted a little bit. We're in this process of like expanding our tribe, but the most important thing is that it's fun and the vibes are good. Like, and that everyone's, yeah. And it's this mentality is so amazing because you know, people, they go to work and they can't wait to go home. I literally have people calling me like, when's the next? Like, why are you slacking, Kiesza? Like, because I'm like editing the mini music videos myself, editing the radio shows myself. I'm like very hands-on with this project.
Right.
So I'm falling behind too because we're meeting deadlines. I got to be in places. I'm on this podcast. I'm on the Deadmau5 show. And I'm like, meanwhile, like editing and like, it's a lot, but there's this really organic flow to everyone that we know what we're expected of within our roles, but we also know that we can also collaborate with everyone. And like, honestly, like, my manager, I was like, hey, because she's like a good singer. I was like, if you ever wanted to just sing on a song with me, I'd be down. Like totally down. Like,
well, I think you've landed on a good clarification to an earlier point, because you were saying it's all about sort of seeking out the fun, making sure each thing you're doing is the most fun it can be. But I think it's beyond that. It's having fun with your friends is really like the ultimate and should be the ultimate goal when you're doing creative projects. Because that's, I mean, if I think about the best memories of my entire life, if you break it down to like a molecular level, that's what all of them are, is having fun with your friends. Just
fun with friends. Yeah. And then as it grows, people bring in other people. So then you get this sort of, I always tell people now, it's like, I'm such a metaphor person, right? I think that's why I'm a songwriter. I used to feel like I was this like a foundation of a skyscraper holding everyone else up. And I felt this huge weight on my shoulders with everything I was doing. And the way that we're doing it now, I feel like I'm the sun in my own little solar system, and everyone's the sun in their own solar system. But it's like the planets, I don't have to move the planets. I don't have to hold them up. They just fall into place and they're in orbit without any effort. It's just all happening, you know? And it's very beautiful. And it's sort of, as it expands, there's no more effort added because everyone works so seamlessly together. So it feels really in alignment with just how nature builds itself. And people come in and out. If someone's not available for next music video, we'll just write the storyline so that they just happen to not be there at that moment. You know, like, we're not like, oh no, like, I don't know, it's just
different orbits, the moon sets, the sun rises, that kind of thing. As
that grows, like, if you think about the core, it's really like, I really want to have fun, but then it's like, I want my friends to have fun and my friends want their friends to have fun. And then we want everyone, and we want the audience to have fun. You start to extend into this, you start to realize you see more going on in the world too. And as you grow, you feel like, well, I want to help with that too. It's not just about me. I want there's a lot of people like, I'm so lucky that I'm in a place, even with my head injury and with all the pain that I endure. And I'm so lucky to, first of all, Hideaway saved my life through the car crash. Like, I was in the hospital and at the doctor's office with a lot of other patients who could not go back to work and didn't have a song giving them royalties to help get them through this dark phase of their life. So I'm like, I'm very, very fortunate to even have going through a condition called suicide headaches, to be looked after by my own art and have this sort of space to be able to make mistakes and have, it takes time to come back, but I still can come back. It's like allowed me to also come back in a way that it's me. Like I have the stability to like hone myself as a creative artist. And I very much understand that is very lucky. And I did get struck by lightning, it's so weird. Talk about struck by lightning. I didn't put Hideaway out till 2014, but I shot it July 9th, 2013.
Okay.
My car crash was also on July 9th.
Oh, interesting.
So the two most impactful moments in my life all happened on the same day. I got struck by lightning, and, you can get struck by lightning in a good way or a bad way, but...
Does that mean anything? Do you take anything from that?
I don't think my thoughts have any ability to like deduce anything real out of that, but it's funny because I think there's a little bit of something with myself because the days are the same, that when it comes to that day, I'm like, I don't know, maybe should I do something or should I not? And I shot a little whole, like, I put out a cover of, the Kate Bush from, why am I blanking on my own?
Running Up That Hill.
Yeah. Running Up the Hill. Everyone did it. But I was like, you know what? I actually like this song and I actually know it and can sing it. So I'm going to do it. And plus I have like, I've been compared to Kate Bush before. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to give her a little, I'm going to honor this moment because I'm proud of Kate. But I actually shot a music video for that and I didn't put it out because when I shot it, I realized the day was July 9th and I shut down. I was like, and it's on YouTube, unlisted still. And I saw it the other day and I'm like, should I just unlist that?
Well, I was going to say it might even be, I think I could see a scenario where that works in your favor, honestly, because so many people were putting out versions of that song. I feel like you come out a little later with one, maybe it gets a bit more attention.
I was just paranoid because this is the same day that everything else happened. Course. So maybe I'll put it, I'll just put it out I'll just unlist it on a not July 9th day.
Yeah. Which, maybe that works out. I mean, it's interesting.
It's not like, it's just cute. It's cute because it's literally, again, having fun with a friend. My friend, we were at this house and it happened to have, the people have fake grass.
Right.
They just decided they wanted the grass to be black. They're like, black grass.
Sure.
And so we're kind of like, I mean, that is a choice. This is a choice that someone made, and it's not wrong. It's just it is a choice. Like,
I bet their neighbors might think it's wrong.
Right. Yeah. Who knows? I actually kind of liked it. And I was like,
I'm into it.
She had her iPhone and I was like, why don't I just roll in the black grass and you film me? And literally that is what happened. And it's iPhone video. And I'm just like running around with a mic rolling in black grass as she films me. And then I fell into the pool at one point.
Beautiful.
And that is the video that you would see if I unlist it.
Hey, I love it. Well, maybe one day.
Yeah. Who knows? Yeah. I mean, that's where the artists, like, you have to remember, like, I think that's where artists can also get in their own way. It's like, that is something no one is seeing because I within myself, I'm like, for some reason, just like, I can't.
Yeah. Well, there's a business. You have to grapple with the business side of it too. You can't always be just in the clouds, especially when you're doing everything independently. But I do think you got to still kind of listen to the gut feeling at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's like, it is a weird balance. And balance is probably the best word in the world, honestly. But I'm mastering the business side in a very artful way lately.
That's what it seems like. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just realizing that I like that. And I like people and I like talking to people. I like working with people. And I like seeing other people grow too and succeed. And it makes me really happy to see my friends growing and succeeding. So, that is business.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like it's just figuring out how to organize those likes and those wants into sort of a structured system.
But here's the thing is like, you actually don't have to do that. I mean, Hideaway is the best example is that you really don't have to do that if you just keep the core pure.
Yeah,
so it will just descend. It will organize itself and you will get the answers. Like, I don't know, we had a little hiccup, say a couple months ago where we just didn't have the right team and it was nobody's fault. It just wasn't right, you know? And we're like, oh no, like, what are we going to do in the middle of a rollout? Is it going to mess everything up? And it actually ended up just being so seamless. And we just started like meeting the right people and we're still kind of like working with some, like, we just didn't panic. And we're like, oh, it's just, again, it's like we just bumped into a wall and we're like course correcting and it's some things were behind, but that's okay. I'm like, what I don't do today, I will do when I have space. Like, this is a story that I'm telling and I don't have to tell it all right today. We can roll it out and then I will continue sharing the story.
I mean, that's so nice to hear. That's such a balm in a lot of ways. I talk to a lot of different people about sort of their journey to where they're at on this podcast. And I think a lot of people who listen to this are up and coming musicians of one form or another. And there's always this, I think, especially in 2024 with the era of social media we're in, this desire to be like perfectly polished and to have a flawless plan from the very start of your career. It's very nice. And I'm really glad you said that to, just be like, no, it doesn't. You're fine. Like it's all, as long as you keep on the track that feels right, it'll work out. You don't have to have the perfect plan out of the gates. And it's all about kind of how you adjust in the moment. That's really nice.
It really is how you adjust. And like, it's being adaptable because your plan will change because we can't predict the future. Yeah. No one can. And no one ever, even the weather is a great example. Like we do our best.
Oh yeah. And the more you plan, the more it'll get messed up. That's the other part no one says.
Yeah. And it's like not getting knocked off balance when things don't go the way you planned. It's just course correction. And sometimes things take longer than you want them to, but you never want to rush something because then it's never going to be what it was meant to be.
This is also a sailing metaphor, I'm realizing.
Oh, there's so many sailing metaphors. Like the best sailing metaphor that I learned was you're trying to get from point A to point B, but you can never go in a straight line. Yeah. The only way to get to point B is to zigzag with the changing wind, and you don't know when it's going to shift. You have to be fully present and aware and shift with it when it shifts. And sometimes you have to go backwards to go forwards, quite frankly.
That's right. But that's exactly right.
You just keep your heart set on the destination and you course correct and you will arrive. And by the time you arrive, you'll kind of already be ready to move on to the next destination, it's actually a very beautiful thing because we can fixate on this one place that we want to be. But when you get there, I think a lot of people feel like, oh, this is not what I expected. It's because we're not meant to stop. Like life is not about stopping. It's about always being in motion and shifting and changing. And if you look at evolution, like species are not meant to stick around either. Humans as we are today are not the same as humans 10,000 years ago. Right. Like we've shifted. there's Neanderthals, or we're mixed from other species of ape-like.
Yeah.
Homogeneous, and I'm saying it all wrong, but
no, but it's a nice thought. I think about this sometimes too in moments of stress or frustration with myself, that there's something comforting about the fact that like 10,000 years from now, somebody is going to look back at like you and me and be like, ugh, that's what it was. Like, that's no good. You know?
Or they'll be like Da Vinci. They'll be like, that was genius.
Well, yeah, that's possible.
Like Socrates. I know there's wisdom. I mean, the Bible is from a long friggin' time ago, and a lot of people still are like, this is it,
Yeah, that's a separate conversation. I feel
wisdom can last, wisdom can simplicity. I read the Tao Te Ching, that's like 4,000 years old.
Right.
That's some of the best wisdom there is. The thing is things don't really change. They just appear to change. And we have to always remind ourselves that like just being kind and being good and simplicity and like just being there to support and help someone and having them be there for you that's enough. Even if your life is short, even if like my friend I lost my best friend when during the time that Hideaway was big. I lost literally my best friend to cancer. And it's really sad. It's like what she went through was sad, but that girl lived faster than I did. She did more things than I ever did. She lived an amazing life.
Yeah.
She lived from day one to the last. She just fully lived, and you can't feel sad about that, because that girl, damn, did she ever live a lot? Like, she lived fully. And that makes me happy knowing how much she got out of her life. So it's just, that will never change. Ever.
Yeah. So
without, like, all this everything else is extra, going to outer space and finding new planets and seeing new trees. Like, there's probably trillions of undiscovered things on our own planet that we still have yet to find. Like, there's always going to be more to discover where we are, under the ocean, in the sky. We cannot process close to any of that. We can't even process what's going on inside of our brain. Our brain has more connections in it than the visible stars in the galaxy. Like,
do you think your brain, now that you've, are in the process of recovering, have made a significant recovery from the accident, do you feel different, either as a person or a creative? Like, do you think something actually changed?
Yeah. There's like, it's hard to describe. It feels like a firewall was taken off a little bit. I'll see things like colors.
Okay.
And a neuro-ophthalmologist actually, like, she thinks they're really there. So that was kind of cool. She's like, I don't think you're just hallucinating. I think you're seeing real stuff.
You're tuning into something interesting.
She's like, I think a sensor is just that usually would filter that out is just not filtering it out. So I see these like purple flowing energy orbs.
Interesting.
Sometimes
Very
it's just interesting.
Which, by the way, that it's like, that almost sounds like a psychedelic experience, which I think a lot of people, when they take psychedelics, feel more connected to the natural world. And sometimes you're seeing things like what you're describing. I mean,
the funny thing is that being fully connected is the full experience. It's not psychedelic. That is the one true experience of life. It's just that we're so disconnected from that when we experience it, it feels like this psychedelic thing.
Right.
But it is a place we literally can go, like mushrooms and all that. When they talk about mushrooms, they're like, they take you to places that you can go naturally.
Right. And
I definitely have been to some of those places, especially with my head injury. But yeah, I mean, when you go through these like meditations and find little sparks of what feels like enlightenment, you're finding a full connection to yourself. So it feels psychedelic by contrast, but it actually is the closest thing you have to what's really there beneath the surface all the time.
Right.
And so as you learn this more and realize it's actually not this crazy thing, it's really just there. It's a place I can go as much as I really allow myself to go. You get there more often. And easier.
Well, yeah. I mean, your creativity, your songwriting, do you think that changed in a similar way? If you're able to, and don't let me put words in your mouth, but if you're able to sort of more often connect to whatever that thing is, what's really happening, what the world is really saying, does that change the way you write music?
Yeah, it's definitely like, it's made me open up more. I also have more fun, like songs like I Go Dance. It's just like, it's practically a song about pole dancing, It's just like in this moment I was just... That might be my favorite song
off the record, by the way. I really like that song.
Yeah, because I don't want to just be like preaching depth, when people want to dance. Like, I also just want to like have fun, and like sometimes you don't want to go too deep. I think I'm just a little more free. I was free before, but I think I'm more okay with the state of confusion. It doesn't shut me down. I walk into it
right
with excitement. I find that confusion brings us closer to what we're looking for. It opens up our senses. It allows us to receive more information if we just accept it. And confusion is just your self calling for a moment of stillness, really, so that you can absorb the information that it's trying to receive. So I'm better at stopping. I'm better at slowing down to receive information. I'm also better at holding on to it and not just spitting it out too quickly. Because there's also like, sometimes you have to plant a seed and that seed has to grow roots and those roots have to sprout. And then when it's ready to bloom, it just will. I wanted to just like, I'd have the whole idea within myself, but I wanted it to be in front of me right away. And I think that's right. When you're young, you want instant gratification. You want to be instantly everywhere all the time. But the beauty is really in the growing, the process. So I'm really better at holding on to things that I can tell aren't quite fully formed and ready to come out, and just allowing them to grow. And then I don't even have to put them out. They just come. They come when they're ready. So I think I'm a little more at peace within myself. And pain will do that to you, because you can only go through pain two ways. It's like run away from it or move it or work with it. And I chose to go with it because I had more life to live. I had more fun to be had. And I just told myself, if it's not going away, I gotta learn to have some sort of a relationship with this pain that works. And my first thought was, I need to create something so fun and so wonderful in life that I actually forget the pain itself. And that was the beginning of Dancing and Crying. It was like, if this was to be the last thing I ever did or was ever able to do, how would I want it to be? And it really, for me, if I was to think, okay, this is it for me. It was not about what was put into the world, because if I was leaving, right?
Yeah.
I wouldn't be sitting with it after that. I would be up for everyone else. It would be really about the experience and the process. So the process of Dancing and Crying is where the true art is. We are on adventures. We are living life. We're having deep discussions. There are people involved. There are friends involved. We've had secret VIP parties, and like we've had not even VIP. It's literally everyone was invited. We're like a VIP, but everyone's invited. We're just finding ways to expand the perception of beauty around us and within ourselves and with each other, kind of.
I mean, that's right there. What you just said is beautiful. I think that as a creative mission statement, it doesn't get much better than that.
Thank you. I'm like, I already forgot that. Well, I'll remember it.
I'll send it to you later. We'll clip that out. That was good. But no, I mean, all of this is beautiful. I mean, I think a lot of what you're talking about is being present. It's about living in the moment, which is one of those true cliches that we all kind of know we should do, but is still hard to do oftentimes. I do have an alternate to that, though, because you have to do what makes the most sense at the moment that you're in. And there was a time when cluster headaches, I was getting them 4 or 5 times a day, and I could not be present because the present was literally the worst pain in the world. And what got me through the present was actually leaving the present and going into the past and remembering all these good times I had, and then looking to the future and being like, okay, I'd imagine a reality that may never come, but it was enough to pull me out of this moment that I was in. Yeah.
And so you got to do whatever makes sense to move yourself towards, again, that joy, that center of joy that's within us all. And sometimes that is leaving the present.
It's a good point.
Which was a weird thing, but the present isn't always the present in the conscious reality that we have. Because I do think within ourselves, we are always in a really beautiful, balanced place. But the present that we experience as our sort of perceived reality, sometimes you do have to leave it. But anyways, got onward.
No. Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, there's something to...
Nice point.
Well, no, I think gratitude is a part of that too, right? Because if I think about times in my life when I've been in the most pain, then whenever I get out of that, it feels incredible, right? Like once you've experienced really bad pain and then moved on from it, it's like night and day. It's like the best I've ever felt, right? Because before you didn't know how bad that was going to feel. Now you do. And
by contrast,
the contrast.
Everything else is amazing.
Yeah.
It's like people that are really angry all the time. And then when they have this moment where they're just not angry, you're like, they're amazing.
Right.
but they're not even like happy.
Right,
they're just normal, but they're normal by contrast to their anger is like,
which by the way,
wow, this
good tip for music writing too, as long as we're on the subject.
Yeah. I have many tips for music writing. I mean, music writing is really just getting into a flow state. Moving, walking is one of the best triggers to get into a flow state. If you're sitting and you're not moving, just change rooms, change environment, go for a walk. Literally, It's amazing because I mean, again, but could go on for like 3 hours in this conversation.
I love it.
But I was thinking about species and why things are created, because nature doesn't create anything for no reason, right? So like pack hunters, like wolf packs, whale packs, they hunt in groups. They organize around their one large prey,
right.
And then they have this structure that just happens naturally. And all that they need to know is their distance from the prey, and then like where they need to be in the circle. And then they just fall into place. Humans are a little different because we seek prey that's so big. We'll seek an entire flock of buffaloes, Yeah. Or we don't use what we have. We don't hunt with our mouth and our hands. We're hunting with tools.
Right.
And
of course
we have to create for our survival, but we also have to like shift in the moment. So I think I was just thinking, and this might be totally wrong because I haven't actually I don't necessarily think this is right, but it was like, what made us creative? It's like, well, the need to create in the moment to survive, and having to course correct, having to,
well, and also having to deal with pain, right? Because pain has always been around in the human experience. And I think...
Yeah, but every animal feels pain, though. They experience it differently, though. We feel it, I think, it's connected to our emotions, I think, in a bigger way, which...
Yeah. Well, and it's also, I think, having if we can call it luxury, to have space and time to be creative, right? Because I think there's certainly animals that experience a wide range of emotions and deep thought of a certain type, but I think they're my dog. Yeah, totally. But their existence, especially out in nature, there's not time for like an elephant to make a painting.
There's no time. Yeah. I know. Well, I mean, there is now. There's some painting elephants out there.
No, I know. That's why I said it. But it's like they're in a zoo somewhere and have a very different life than
I know, and they should be in the wild.
Gave them.
It's dangerous in the wild. Yeah. I'm big on conservation. That's a whole other.
Me too. Also, okay, let me ask you this, because this gets back to sort of what's coming up next for you. Are you at a point where you're looking at going back to a lot of live shows? Do you like touring in general?
I love the live show, probably more than anything. I really love it. I do want to tour. I still have a lot that I do deal with my head. So it's like finding the balance. But I am doing really good. Like I did some shows with Deadmau5, like I said recently. Yeah. I did get reactions, honestly, but they're manageable. It's not crazy. It's like, as long as I can't do a show and then go party after, right. But that I'm okay with that.
Were you ever a partier? You don't strike me as like a crazy partier.
No, but I'll hang out.
Sure.
I'm not a drinker. I think that's what actually, and I was told by doctors, like, because I never had any, like, my organs were so healthy.
Yeah.
My body was in such a healthy state when I got injured that it really helped my healing process. Because person who drank tons and tons of alcohol and partied and smoked and everything, their brain wouldn't be able to heal as fast.
Yep.
So they're like, it was really lucky for you that you put so much effort into your health. Thankfully.
Yeah, no, people don't think about that. My uncle had like a couple heart attacks in his 40s, which is like some crazy genetic thing. Thank you. But no, he's okay. And the reason is because he's like a crazy athlete, and he, like worked out every day and went on these crazy runs and hikes every day of his life. And they're like, if you were in any worse shape, you'd be dead.
I was funny because you say, like, I was just at the climbing wall. I started rock climbing, and I love it for the mind. It really brings you into the present because you have to be so present on the wall to get up it. But there was this climber that complimented me on my climbing, and it was for me, I'm new at it. So I'm like, whoa, I got a compliment. And then I saw him and he did a wall that like, I'll never be able to do in my entire existence. So I'm like, I can't believe this person complimented me. And I was like, why did you give me a compliment? Because I was on an easy wall, and he was like, it's not the wall, it's not the level you're at. It was the way that you were choosing to climb. He's like, you were moving, you were with the wall. It's like you became a part of the route. You twisted with the route. He's like, you made amazing decisions for where you're at. And it was beautiful to watch. And I was like, I never even thought of like just even someone climbing a wall, no matter how hard, but it actually, there's a flow to everything in life, including a course up a climbing wall.
Yeah. And again, this is like you being able to recognize when the wind is about to change when you're sailing. I think when you're deep into a discipline, for musicians, I bet if you work with a producer, it does not take you very long to ascertain like, oh, this is a special person. Like this is a really talented person.
Yeah.
I heard Jerry Seinfeld talking about comedy, and he was like, it takes me 2 jokes. He's like, if someone like goes up and says a funny joke, anyone can write one funny one. If they do a second one in a row, I can know immediately. I don't need to know anything else about them.
I work with students, and working and teaching has taught me a lot. I work with their stage presence. That's what I focus on. People who struggle as performers, maybe. We all do. When you start, there's so much to learn, but ultimately it does come down again to this connection you have with yourself, and just being able to fully show that on stage was just like one of the scariest places to do that in the world. I have seen firsthand that people can drastically change very rapidly, and it's just about having it's about having the experience of that connection. Like realizing, like for example, I'll put the students through some really challenging things on stage. I'll have them act totally different than they've ever acted. But by doing that, it forces them out of their own head. And the second they leave their head, the audience just screams.
Right.
Because the second they're not self-aware, they become connected. And it's only that connection that the audience wants to feel. So any comedian, if you can get them to connect with themselves, they will, whether or not the funniest and the not funniest, they will be engaging. Any person connected to themselves in any scenario, anywhere, is always captivating no matter what. So I would just want to like work with them a little bit and try to figure out what is not, where it's like, I call it the leaks, like where they're leaking out fear, and try to plug that. And then, I have hope.
I think what he was saying too, and I don't know if you connect with this, but it's once you're really established in a discipline or an art form, it's not about being able to immediately recognize this person's really talented. It's more about being able to see the potential, right? That like, oh, this person has this interesting natural instinct like you with rock climbing. And I think that's something, the longer you do something, the more you can see the potential for it in others.
Yeah. But I also think being a musician made me seek the same feeling on the wall that I seek in a song. Like I'm always seeking that flow state. And I remember at the moment that I was climbing, when he came and talked to me after, I mentally was like, I want to try to climb with the least effort possible, like expend as little energy as I can. And so I was like, my body was like, okay, don't use my arm, like swing, use momentum. And it became an art form. But I was actually seeking the most effortless way up the wall when it actually stood out as beautiful to somebody. And really a song, like you're always seeking the most effortless way through this melody. I think that's maybe we've arrived. It's just seek the most effortless way through any situation.
Yeah. Ride the waves,
to flow through any situation, and it will work out. I really believe that everyone, I don't think the X factor is something that's born into one and not another. I think we're just really carved out by circumstance. And I have a mom who's really like a very expressive being.
Were your parents artists, by the way, in some way?
My mom was a house mom, But she was an artist. Like she sang, she songwrited, she was a performer. She's just, as a human being, very much like she wears herself on her sleeve. And my dad's kind of the opposite, honestly. He's like a tech guy and computer programs and is quite shy and good with numbers and stuff. So I got two extremes going on. But I was able to see someone who, my mom will dress up in weird outfits and not care, not worry about what someone thinks of her. She just likes the outfit she chose that day. And I think by being around that energy, it made me also be like, oh, it's okay to put on a weird outfit and if somebody doesn't like it, that's okay. So I happened to be around that type of person. And then I had to learn my own things in life too, being around other people. But I think all babies come into this world just these like pure vessels. And then in this whatever scenario we happen to be in, kind of defines our experience. But I know some people come from harder experiences than other, but I don't believe that. I believe everyone can find their way back to that source. And I don't ever want to look at someone and say, like, if I'm say teaching a student, I'm not going to go through the class and be like, okay, he has it, he doesn't, she has it, she doesn't. It's actually the one that has it the least that I want to work with the most, because that person actually needs it the most. They actually, if they are the furthest from feeling themselves, and I want them to feel themselves. And so I just have hope. I really have hope for anyone. And I want for everyone to have the same experience that I have when I create. It's the best feeling in the world to be flowing within yourself and then have that come out into the world and have it connect with people. I don't know, this competition of like, they don't wanting other people to succeed doesn't make sense to me, because like, why I would want everyone I want this feeling that I have to be shared with everyone. Really, it's a lot easier to stand up for yourself when you have the support of a group around you. We are tribal. We are like group species.
Well, in the music industry, everyone at a certain point starts to feel isolated. You stick around long enough and it's like everyone's off on their own little ship and no one's really communicating with each other.
They're on like island. I was there. I've been there and I will never go there again. Not for any amount of money, not for anything. It's not worth it. It's just, I don't want to spend my last breath and look back on my life and think like I was on an island forever.
Right.
So when you're in that scenario, when you're alone on your island, you feel isolated. You're usually surrounded by tons of people. But the problem is as opposed to the person at the center serving the people and looking out for their tribe, their ecosystem, they are being served by the ecosystem.
Yeah.
Which doesn't work. It's not how nature works. And so it will consume itself. Ultimately, they will be eaten emotionally, psychologically, by this sensation of being preyed on, because everyone's so fixated on them. And that's predator energy when everyone's just focused on you. So they feel at the center of their island, you see it all the time with these. Just pay attention. Like they can't look you in the eye. They get alone. They get angry. Yep. They push people away. And it's because it's been orchestrated in a way that turns all the attention on them all the time. Yeah.
And they stop participating in the community that they originally wanted to be a part of,
Yeah. And so much energy flows in their direction that they can't actually process all of it, whether it be money or just attention or whatever. You can't process. It's like filling up a battery that's already full. Suddenly it's just like there's too much. And so instead of distributing it towards the rest of the community who are probably lacking in that necessary energy, they hoard it. But it's any energy that's not in motion will turn into trauma in some form or another. It just does. So you get this sort of traumatic, toxic environment that builds from this stagnant sort of energy flow. Whereas the person at the center, their job is to look out for their ecosystem, make sure everyone's happy, make sure everyone's fed and getting, and then I think the reason this happens too is because oftentimes it's hard to achieve it in the first place. And people, once they get there, then they're afraid of losing it. So they clamp down, they, try to grasp power wherever they can get it, which excludes everybody else. And then you sort of lose the point of the whole thing and get into what you're talking about. And nobody knows what it is.
Well, sure.
What is it? Like, the dream is the yacht, you know? Have you ever taken care of a yacht? Like, trust me, it's not a dream. Maintenance
As a sailor,
maintenance isn't fun.
That's funny.
But yeah.
Well, look,
it's just, Can I? Well, I mean, we've been talking for like 2 hours.
No. I don't want to keep you here all day. I feel bad because I know we've gone. I love this. I could talk to you forever. This is a blast. But I would be really mad at myself. I want to ask you a very specific question that's not related to anything we've been talking about. Just because I love this song, "Take You There" that you did with Jack U.
Oh, yeah.
There's just, I don't even have a specific question. It's just, as a DJ, I loved that song so much. I made edits of that song so I could keep playing it for years. Do you have any memories of that song?
That one has a
working with like Wes and Sonny, any of that? Like, what do you think about that song when you think about it?
That has a very vivid memory of that song. I was in Ibiza, and it was my first show in Ibiza. And Hideaway was very fresh and new. So I was like, I still hadn't figured out that I was famous at the time. Like I was still this starving artist in New York in my head, hustling. And so suddenly I find myself in Ibiza, and I knew the names Skrillex and Diplo, and I'd maybe seen their faces a couple of times, but I just wasn't like cluing in. But like they came backstage and came to my set, and I was like, I know those people. Yeah. Who are they? And then somebody was like, Diplo and Skrillex showed up at your set. And I was like, Diplo, Skrillex, I know that song. Okay, cool. And I was like kind of brushing it off because I was overwhelmed, honestly, at the time. It was very overwhelming. And they kept coming up to me like, hey, you should go hang out with them. And I was like, oh, okay. And I was like, yeah, okay, I'll go say hi. And then I went and said hi, and like, they're really nice. And I don't know, I was like a bit spaced out at the time. Like there was a lot going on. So then Skrillex was like, do you want to come like to my hotel room with us and make some music? And I was like, oh, that sounds fun. Yeah, let's do it. And so we all kind of went back to Skrillex's hotel room, a group of us. And it was basically me, Wes, and myself. Me, Wes, Sonny, and then actually Rami was in the room, but he was more like hanging. He didn't write.
Sure.
But Sonny, Wes, and I, like I didn't realize how nerdy they were.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm very nerdy. So we started talking about random things. I know Godzilla came up at some point. We ended up like in this empty hot tub. I don't know why the hot tub was empty at his hotel room, but it was empty. So we were just sitting in this empty hot tub, nerding out. And then at some point we're like, oh, we should write something. And then they brought up a bunch of different sort of ideas they had started but weren't finished. And one just kind of clicked with me. I was like, I like this one. And I started writing melodies over it, and like, you told me kind of came out, and we're like, oh, that's cool. And just, it all happened very fast, and it was very, very organic, just in the room having fun again. And like, honestly, like a couple days later, they sent me they worked on it pretty fast. Yeah. So they sent me a finished version soon, and I was quite floored when I heard it. Like I was like, oh, no. Diplo and Skrillex.
Right. Oh, yes. That's what that means. Right. Yeah.
I recognize the sound of, I was kind of hearing the sound of both of them in this production. I was like, it's all making sense. It was like after the song was written, I just realized who I was working with, basically. Right. I was like, that was guys. I liked it. I was like, this is cool. So
that's fun.
I was really excited about that song too.
Yeah. It's huge. I mean, that was like an era defining song to me. Like, I know I think when people think about them, they think about like that Bieber song they did, which is also a great song. But for me, that era, it's Take You There is like that era.
Thank you. I appreciate it. What started that project, actually.
Is that right?
That was the start of that.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Jack U.
Oh, yeah. I did not know that.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
I think they were like, definitely like working together and had the concept, but that song was the beginning of it actually rolling out. So
that's cool.
It did start an era for them. Yeah. I mean, it's about the journey, right? And that's why it's like, you don't want to stick to the same thing. But like, for example, Dancing and Crying, to bring it back to like Dancing and Crying, I really thought about the fact that my audience and my fans really do love to dance. Like they're out there, they're dancing, they're voguing, they're like the LGBTQ community, like they're love to party. They love to express themselves. And I had not done fully done dance music in a while. So I was like, you know what? I'm able to go back into these environments a lot more now. And why don't I just do something really special? Like just drop a bunch of dance tracks for them. I want to do it a way where I feel like I'm moving forward, but I'm also giving them something that I know they really want. And that was to dance, to get back on the dance floor, all of us together. And I really pictured I didn't know what the shows would feel like, but I knew how I wanted them to feel. Like I want it to feel like we're all back together. Like just everyone's just fully feels confident just being exactly who they are in this moment. And we've had a few of these little test events and they've been amazing. It's just such good energy in the room. I don't know I've heard all of them. So Dancing and Crying is the opener of the curtain. It's the theater, here we are. And then Heaven Ain't Calling is starting to dip your toe into this sort of depth, but not really fully going there. And then you get I Go Dance. It's straight up pole dancing song. Not gonna lie. But the verse on that is very deep, actually. It is very deep. We were discussing how even at everything is a form of healing in some degree, even the weirdest. Yeah. So we were talking about different, my co-writer, Kay, who's one of my best friends, it's again, friends hanging out, writing music. Yeah. We're discussing just all the things in life that are healing and how some of even our darkest vices like alcohol and partying, everything, when it gets out of hand, because partying is great, but when it can get out of hand sometimes, then the balance tips. A lot of it's just us trying to fill a void within ourselves. And it's in our process of healing. And so we were like, well, okay, when you go to a strip club, where's the healing in a strip club? So it's there is these people, I don't know, there's people, the dancing, first of all, is phenomenal.
Oh yeah, pole dancing's very hard, first of all.
It's amazing.
Yeah, that's very hard to do.
It's so amazing.
It's an art in and of itself. Absolutely.
I am impressed.
Yeah.
I'm so impressed by pole dancers. But then people who are going to watch the pole dancers, they're going to be healed by this feminine energy and to sort of be out of control, something they cannot touch. And there's they give themselves, I know there's a lot of darkness in these scenarios, but they do also put themselves in the hands of these women who are I will carry you through this moment. I think. I mean, again, I might be completely wrong, but
it's a whole spectrum of experiences. But I think what you're talking about is when it's at its best, the ideal case for strip clubs or pole dancing. I agree with
best
you.
Or worst, best or worst is always there's always some it's something within yourself that is not fully, that just feels off. You're trying to correct this feeling that's not right within yourself. And sometimes we do that in the wrong way. And sometimes we do it in the right way.
Well, sure. And so, if you go into a strip club and have, say, a darker moment, whatever that means, sometimes you can leave and you're oh, that didn't feel good. But even then, that's a lesson, right? You change, something about you changes from that.
Yeah, and they really are protected. They're protected in there. No, I'm not just hanging out at strip clubs all the time. But
no, just 50% of the time.
I love pole dancing. What can I say? But I know, the verse. I know why you came. You don't have to say. I can be the love that you want to feel. We can play the game, but you know your place. I might take what you got, but you get the thrill. So they're there's an exchange. I know what I am, baby. What are you? I'm the paradise in your broken mirror. Heal you from above. That's what angels do. You create your hell. I make it disappear. So it's there's a very deep conversation that went behind that one verse. Only one verse in the song. Yeah, and then it shifts into the folk. The Mysterious Disappearance of Etta Place was written as a result of the dino digging. The Airbnb host who's in the song, he's not my friend Clay, right, who was formerly my Airbnb host, who's now my friend, who's now acting in Etta Place music video, who is the voice of the poem. Right. He's a historian, and his job is to basically take people through the history of these outlaws, Butch Cassidy, the Sundance Kid, who were robbing banks and stealing livestock back in the day. And they had this whole incredible setup in this circle of red mountains where they had horses trained to traverse this impossible terrain and get out of them. It's really amazing. And he would walk us through all of this landscapes and show us the cabins they used to live in. And I actually became so inspired by these stories that I wanted to tell one of the stories in a song. And so we move into like Etta Place, which these are all coming out of life, out of real moments. And then Etta Place moves into Strangers, which I actually wrote at 4 a.m. And that was just written on a feeling that turned into almost like a movie scenario in my mind. But that's where it's like getting into healing, but creating a fantasy for you to step into that feeling. And then, go back. I don't want to explain Go Back. It's by design.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I mean, I think what's great about this is what the core of what you're talking about here is the core of what goes into a lot of great pieces of art, which is that there's lots of levels to engage on. Like, you've thought this out. You have these sort of high concepts for all these pieces, but at the same time, somebody could listen to it and just like kind of think it's a catchy song and dance around and not think as deeply, whereas somebody else can, dive into the lore and build their own worlds. And I think for me, that's my favorite kind of art, where the consumer can engage on whatever level they're at. Like, you meet them where they are, And like, as you take off layers within yourself, you have a new experience with the music as well. And there's songs were chosen very carefully because there's more songs, and there's songs I'm just so excited to come out, but I held off. There's 4 volumes at least. That's the plan. Yeah. And I already know what's going to be the last song and the last one. So there's songs that like, it's like forming its way and the skeleton's there, and there's still songs I have yet to write. But this whole journey of music, there's going to be a lot coming. It kind of came to me as a whole concept in a way, but I didn't have the blanks filled in. So I wasn't just like number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. It's sort of being written in weird orders. Like, I might write a song today that ends up on volume 4, track 3, like, because that's the one. Like, I can feel where it belongs in a weird way. Yeah, that's the knowing when the wind's going to change thing again. It's
exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah. So like, it's weird because one of the last songs of this whole journey through the volumes is actually was written during the time of the first volume. So there's going to be, that's how time works. It's not linear. It's sort of like a flower. It just unfolds.
I like that. Yeah. Well, it's cyclical too, right?
I think you're the first person I actually mentioned that there's 4 volumes too.
Oh, amazing. Well, I love that. I mean, I love knowing how much thought you've put into it and how big the picture you see is. Because as a listener, that makes me excited to engage with it, right? When you know that like there's a grander plan, and that the more you kind of dig into it, the more you'll get out of it. I don't know. I like art like that. Totally. Yeah, it is. It's totally that. And I know that what I think it is now is not what it's going to wind up being, whenever the final one is that comes out. Once it's out, you're sort of not in control of it anymore anyway, right? Like, people are going to ascribe their own meanings to it, and people are going to find things that maybe you didn't even intend. And I hope so. Yeah. Because I don't like to over explain songs, because then I give it meaning that may not mean what it means to the person that's listening. Sure. But again, it's like it's funny because Sound of a Woman, there's a trans woman who said, I heard that and I didn't hear it as a song sung to a woman. I heard it as a song sung to a man. And she said, found the woman within herself. So it was like, I was like, whoa. Right. Sound of a Woman is not even meant for a woman to you. Like, that's amazing. It was meant for, finding the woman that was being suppressed. Right. So, I mean, to me, that's amazing. It makes me so excited to like see how a song can become so many different things to so many people. It's a seed. A song is just a seed, and it sprouts within every person, a whole other creation. And that to me is the most exciting thing, honestly. Yeah. I love that about music. Putting it out, seeing where it grows, how it grows, all that. I mean, I'm right there with you. It is one of the most fun parts. I mean, is there, this is usually what I ask when I'm wrapping things up. In this case, it's sort of silly, but I mean, is there anything else we haven't talked about or anything else that's on your mind?
Oh yeah, there's tons.
Is there anything
we should do another podcast.
Please. I would love to anytime. But I mean,
we should do a podcast with some of my friends.
Okay.
Like get a few weird friends together.
That'd be fun.
And then have like multiple weird people talking to you at the same time. And I think that will be that's like the ecosystem. Get the ecosystem. That sounds great. I think that would be really fun.
That would be really fun. It'd be fun to talk to other people who know you or other people you work with too, to get their perspective. Yeah, let's do it.
We should talk. We should get like my manager on. Like I think it's actually, how often do you get to have a conversation with the community?
Totally. I agree.
That fuels the whole process. Like my friend Ben would be fun. He was the guy who owns the museum, but he's acting in all the music videos. Right. And
yeah, it'd be super fun. That's a good idea for a podcast, actually. Somebody, now that you said, I'm like, oh, that's actually a good idea for like a whole show. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Like the whole ecosystem, like, who's behind all of this? Yeah. It's never one person. I could not do this by myself. It's impossible.
Oh,
literally.
Of course not. No one can. That would be insane.
I'm just the one crazy enough to break open the doors. I'm like, let's go this way. And like, I'm the one kind of bushwhacking.
Right.
Then they're like, hey, do you want some help with the bushwhacking? Yeah. And I'm like, yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. And then we're like, let's all do it together, and then it becomes not so hard at the end of the day.
Absolutely. Well, look, I want to let you get out of here. I'm sure you have 8 million other things to do.
I know.
Is there anything else that needs to be said before we leave? Anything else you want to get out there right now?
Oh, gosh. I mean, no, I think we covered so much.
We really did.
For
this was
2.5 hours.
Yeah, this is crazy.
I just, I feel like where I'm at now is really all about wanting to really help inspire people to unlock their full potential within themselves. And that's why I'm going so willfully down this road of self-expression, because I know that, and I've seen it already, that like when you realize that you see someone else doing it, it kind of reminds you that you have that within yourself. And I want to unlock as many people as I can and inspire as many as I can and not be perfect. Like, don't be perfect. Be as imperfect as you want to be. So, I don't know. I think we said a lot. I'd love to say more, but I feel good about this conversation. Is there anything you want to say?
No. I want to make sure that you feel good about this. I feel great. This was so much fun.
I feel great. Yeah, This is awesome. Should our animals say goodbye?
We can try to. My guy's asleep, so I think.
Oh, you don't wake him up.
Yeah.
Come on, you come say hi, little man. We'll have a different dog next time. We'll have.
There you go. I like that. Different animal each time. God, that's a cute
3
dog.
dogs. He's so cute. He was a rescue.
That's amazing.
A very rare Pomeranian rescue situation.
Yeah, who would let that dog go?
He had a rough pass. He actually nearly died. Here's one more thing that you didn't know. I had to give him mouth to mouth.
No way.
Because he stopped breathing. Yeah.
Damn. Giving a dog mouth to mouth.
And his tongue was out. We thought he was dead, but I was like, I used to be a lifeguard back in the day, and my brain was like, okay, I don't know how to do dogs, but I know how to do babies. And he's like a small newborn.
Wow.
So I just treated him like a newborn baby. Look at him.
And it worked.
So happy.
That's insane.
It worked. I didn't really know. I was so panicky at the time, but I was like doing CPR on him and everything. And
oh man. Well, I love.
Here he is.
He's the cutest dog ever. I also really ending a podcast on dog CPR is like, I don't think we can do better than that.
I know. Yeah, true. And I'm so happy he made it. The vets didn't think that he was going to make it. And I knew in my gut, because he had just come out of this horrible life and into this new life, and he was so happy. He was just in shock with everything. And you can see how happy he is. Like, he always smiles.
Yeah.
He's like all day long. And when he got him, he didn't smile at all. He was just quiet and scared and timid. And I knew that he wanted to live now. I could feel that he was, and I've never really felt this in a dog to this extreme, that he was like oh my gosh, there's more to life than what I've been living. I want to live. And he pulled through.
I mean,
little man, pulled through.
You did it, little man. I mean, you were just talking about wanting to unlock people's potential and, help them find the best version of themselves, all that. That's the same thing. You did it for him.
Yes, I did. He did with little man. And he's helping unlock my potential too.
That's how it works. It's beautiful.
He knows how to bark. I taught him to bark on command, but he wasn't doing it just now.
Oh, that's cute.
Because he's shy. Anyways, we'll see more of little man.
Excellent. Well, this has been a really enjoyable little collision for me. So I thank you for that. And thank you for taking the time to do this. This was really fun.
Oh, you're welcome. This is wonderful.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
100%. And I hope we get to do it again sometime.
Likewise. All right. Well, take care and I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.